Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 476 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with Mike Stewart, who I kind of attribute to me being in front of this microphone in the first place. He's pretty much my longest running internet friend and colleague, and one of the good guys in the industry that I'll never have to go after in Scam Brigade because he's a good guy. And he would be so proud of me if he was sitting here, because I got a compressor limiter noise gate there. I got a computer interface. I got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 channel mixing board here. And I talked him out of all of this stuff, having me do all this stuff back in the old days. But he pretty much got me video editing, and we're going to have a big ham fest here today on problems and mistakes people make with audio, and we got some really cool stories for you. So hang in there. We'll bring them on in a minute. Hope you didn't miss episode 475, how to pitch a podcast host or producer on your own without an agency. Plus, on that episode, I revealed the secret on how to get very expensive podcast agencies working for you for free. That's a very cool trick. I have a lot of big name podcasters doing it now because of me. All right, how'd you like me to send you big checks? Well, how about joining our affiliate program? Just email me at tom@screwthecommute.com, and I'd be happy to send you big checks, PayPal, gold bullion, if I knew how to do it, cryptocurrency, but I have no idea how to do it. And you can make a lot of money just referring our products and services. And grab a copy of our automation ebook. This book has helped me handle up to 150,000 subscribers and 65,000 customers without pulling my hair out. So grab it at screwthecommute.com/automate free. And all this stuff will be in the show notes, including links to Mike's stuff, because you'll want to check him out thoroughly. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP, where you can put us on your cell phone and tablet and take us with you on the road. Now is the time I usually just tell you all about my school, but I'm going to get rid of that today because I want to tell you about the program we have going on that I'm really, really proud of. We have a program to give scholarships to persons with disabilities. So not only can they legitimately learn a highly in-demand skill, which is internet marketing and digital marketing for small business, learn from home, they can legitimately work from home, which I've been preaching for 24 years. But now with this pandemic, everybody says, oh, you can work from home. I didn't know that. So check that out at imtcva.org/disabilities. That's plural. And at the top, we have a GoFundMe campaign, and any little bit you contribute helps out. And if you're really flush with cash, you can sponsor a person yourself. That'd be very cool. I kind of equate it to you getting your name up on a library or a park plaque that you helped, make something permanent that really changed people's lives. So check it out. All right, let's get to the main event. Mike Stewart's the president and founder of Stewart Internet Solutions. It's an internet consulting agency and services company, and it's in Nashville, Tennessee. It used to be in Atlanta. Mike's composed countless radio jingles, television scores, and he's produced and performed with some of the bigness. It would take the whole podcast to read this guy's bio because he's really been there, and he has a gold record. I'll have him tell you about that. So Mike, are you ready to screw?
Yeah. So that's what you tell your guests?
Yes. Well, you got to be ready to screw the commute.
Okay. Oh, the commute. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're not on the road, you got plenty of time to do other things.
Yeah.
So how you been, man?
Moving to Nashville was something I wanted to do my whole life. And I was involved with the music industry in Atlanta from 1979 to about 1995. And the music industry, the Southern rock world that I was a part of there, it kind of got taken over by the the hip hop and rap world. Now, Atlanta is known worldwide for its hip hop and rap world, which I have no problem with, if that's your cup of tea, but it wasn't mine. And so around 99 is about the time I met you. And I started saying, well, I'm going to take my audio skills as an audio engineer to the internet. And I found a whole nother world, speaking and info product creation. And I pretty much said, okay, it's not in the cards for me to be in the music business anymore. But about 10 years ago, I started working with the country artist Ray Stevens, guy who had Guitar Zan and The Streak and Everything is Beautiful. He's an old Georgia fella. And I started working with him in Nashville. And about 6-7 years ago, Ray said, Mike, I think Nashville could use a guy like you. But he said, let me tell you a little something about Nashville. We're not much into this virtual internet stuff. We go have breakfast and lunch and we meet face to face. So if you don't live here, you're never going to build relationships. And he was 100% correct. It was pretty interesting this past year because of COVID. I had a bunch of my music industry people going, so how do you use this Zoom thing? And I went, oh my gosh. I mean, Zoom has been around forever and it's like, you're just now, they still struggle with it. But at any rate, 50 years ago, I wanted to move to Nashville, but I moved to Atlanta instead. And I don't regret it because I've had chapters of my life that are just amazing. And this is just a new chapter in my life to be around the music industry again. And it's really manifested a lot of things that I've always enjoyed and wanted to do. And we'll talk about some of those things, but still, I am an audio guy at heart. I love music. I love recording process. And I mean, I remember the first conversation you and I had, what do I need to record with my computer? And here you are owning and using all those things. You said, no, Mike,
no,
that's too much. No, we can't do that. No.
Well, I had to evolve into it. Now I've always known you as a water guy. Are you sitting on a wave runner right now as you talk to me?
Well, I could have, but I wanted to use my best microphone because if we're going to talk about microphones, I do have a houseboat with a studio now, and if the internet connection was a little more stable at the marina, I would have been there. But no, I'm in my studio here, but I live on a peninsula. It's a little thumb sticking out in Percy Priest Lake. When I lived in Georgia, I lived on Lake Lanier. You came to my house there years ago, and so the first thing I did was I took Google Maps and I said, okay, if I'm moving to Nashville, where are the lakes? and there's two lakes up here. There's Percy Priest and Old Hickory Lake, and I frequent both of them as much as I can because I still love being on the lake.
Yeah. So not now. I do remember one time in Atlanta, your boat was sitting in the mud or something. Wasn't there a drought or something?
We had a drought, and the lake was in danger of the water supply for Atlanta being interrupted. We just had a drought, and the lake levels dropped dangerously low. So I had a cove that had 20 feet of water, and we were 22 feet deep. So I bought this expensive house with a dock sitting in mud.
Oh man, I'd be better off because I can't swim. I actually, if I go near the water, I literally wear two life jackets in case one malfunctions.
Well, I understand that.
You're a water guy.
I'm a water guy. I jump in wherever there's water to swim. I just love it. And you'd mentioned Wave Runner. I take my Wave Runner out on this lake here, Percy Priest, but then I take my houseboat out on Old Hickory. Old Hickory is basically the Cumberland River, which is dammed north of Nashville. And then it goes, you can actually take the Cumberland River all the way to New Orleans if you had enough gas and wanted to do that.
Wow. So tell them about this gold record you got. I always love this story.
Well, when I moved to Atlanta, I got involved with all of the music industry people that were there. We had a really great music community in Atlanta in the 70s and 80s. And way I made a living is I had a home studio, a 4-track tape recorder studio in my house. And me and a couple of buddies of mine, Jerry Buckner and Gary Garcia, we started writing jingles for local businesses for radio. which, that was, we were actually recording jingles on a 4-track tape recorder in a house and selling them, and they were running on Atlanta radio.
Now that's
And
where
then,
you had to use a razor blade to cut and paste stuff together, right?
oh my goodness, yeah, everything was on 1/4-inch tape, and you had a splicing block and a razor blade, a China marker, and when you wanted to edit something else, you had to put a mark on the tape and then put it down on the splicing block and cut it with a razor blade and throw it away or hang it somewhere if you're going to use it later. Learning to edit on tape when digital came about was a great background that sadly a lot of these young kids that never saw, they don't even know what a tape recorder is.
Right,
right. You can say tape or cassette or 8-track, and they go, "What are those?"
Right.
They even go, "What's a CD?" So, and anyway, long and short of it was that was audio editing was with a razor blade, and a good audio editor could splice tape together and use splicing tape to hook it all together. So anyway, Gary, Jerry, and I, we did jingles, and we recorded voiceovers, and we created commercials for radio. But those guys also played in a band. I played in a band at night. And Pac-Man games were in all the hotels.
Mm-hmm.
They were like they had two kinds. They had the arcade machine, and then they had the tabletop. Well, we were pumping quarters in those games like crazy. And Gary and Jerry got the inspiration. Let's write a song using those sound effects. and we went in the studio and we recorded Pac-Man Fever, and a local radio station played it. And back in the old days, the verbiage was the phone lit up. If the phones lit up, that meant people loved it. And that was the catalyst that got us the record deal with Columbia Records. And we did an album, and album sold 2 million. And I didn't write the songs, but I was the keyboard player in the band. And we had a hit record, and we were going to tour, and then the tour never happened. And then radio said, we'll let you have one novelty record. They called us a novelty band because it was a song about a video game. Kids loved it, but when our second song Donkey Kong came out, radio refused to play it. And one hit record does not make a career. So
you still get any residuals?
But I did. Only the writers did, but okay. That was 40 years ago. Yeah. We make more money off of people going to BucknerGarcia.com and buying the autograph CDs. In fact, if you go to BucknerGarcia.com, we're selling pop sockets, a membership site with we've got pictures. I mean, we're doing all kinds of crazy things, and people are streaming the song. So we're making consistent money from CD Baby and these things. And I made more money from that than I did from working on the album. So.
Wow.
But the gold record is fact, in my internet marketing, I always hung my gold record in my videos because people would say, "Do you really have a gold record?" And I go, "Yeah. I mean, I played in this band. We had a hit record called Pac-Man Fever. And so I was awarded a gold record, and I'm proud of it. But I made more money from people being impressed of me having a gold record than I did.
Right. Well, that's the one when people were on Oprah. Most of them didn't make a nickel, but they could brag forever that they were on Oprah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kudo that has perceived value. So anyway, that's the story of Pac-Man Fever. My jingle buddies. We sadly lost Gary in 2011, and Jerry and I and some of the band. In fact, we during COVID put the living members of the band together, and we put up a video of us. And I found some old footage of Gary at a wedding, and we put a video together of the whole band performing it. So go to YouTube and look for Pac-Man Fever Live, and you can see what us old fellows look like playing the song.
That's cool. Now, wasn't there something big come up with a movie or Disney or something?
Well, in 2012, the producers of a movie called Wreck-It Ralph, which was a Disney animated movie about 80s video games. In fact, they had all the real video games from the 80s, Q*bert and Candyland and a handful of them, and Pac-Man. And Wreck-It Ralph was a fictitious 80s video game, 8-bit video game. And they had written a song called for the movie Wreck-It Ralph. And the producer of the movie, remember, he was a kid when Pac-Man Fever came out. So he Googled Pac-Man Fever, Buckner Garcia. He found our website and he contacted us and he said, we have this movie, which we were unbeknownst to us, we weren't watching the trades or knew anything about it. So we have this movie about 80s videos game, and can you guys do the theme if we send you the song? And we said, well, yeah, but unfortunately our lead singer has passed away. And they said, well, as long as you're legally and ethically Buckner Garcia, we'd like you guys to perform the theme song to it. And so that was September. And we said, well, great. When do you need it back? In 2 weeks. So we recorded it on our computers through the internet, sent it back, and it's in the movie. And what was interesting, it is the theme song to the movie. But I don't know if you've been to movies lately.
No.
The theme song was the last thing to play in the movie.
Oh.
During the credits. There were 4 other songs that played before our theme song. So we went to the movies to hear it. And by the time it got to our song, the whole theater was cleared out. So I don't think anybody's ever heard the theme song. But if you go to YouTube,
still bragging rights.
It's still you go to YouTube and search Wreck It Ralph, Buckner Garcia. You can hear the song that we recorded on our computers at home. Danny, who sang it, was the drummer. He did the drums and sang it. I did all the bass and keyboards, and Jerry did keyboards. And then Jamie Houston, who wrote the song for Disney, mixed it in Los Angeles. And within 14 days, we went from, do you guys want to do it, to being ready to, and the movie came out in November. So that's why they had to have it mid-September. So it was one of the last things to be cut into the final edit of the movie. But it almost won an Academy Award. It was beaten out by Frozen.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And my grandchildren love Frozen, yeah. But I don't.
I wouldn't even have any idea what it looks like. So, all right, so let's get into some kicking around some, you've been around audio a long time. You've taught me, it's now 21 and a half years ago to get started editing. And so let's go into some of the common mistakes people make with audio. First of all, they should know that it's one of the most popular mediums because it's the only medium somebody can learn or be entertained while they're doing something else. So it's really a good skill to have. It's made me a fortune. So just take it away and just mistakes and what to do about them.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that people do is not getting a studio quality microphone. What I call a large diaphragm vocal mic. And there's lots of brands out there. When you and I started, the USB microphones, like the Yeti and the Audio-Technica and the Samson and the Rode, all these microphones didn't exist. You had to have an analog microphone, and you had to have a analog to digital interface for your computer. But the thing is I've heard a lot of people record stuff with their built-in microphone with their computer, or a webcam microphone. And even though those microphones have gotten better over the years, there's still nothing with the quality of a good studio microphone.
All right, so let me ask you something. Let me tell you something that I've experienced over the past couple of years and get your opinion on. So I had a leftover condenser mic that you had gotten me, and then I had another one around here as a backup when the first one broke. And I did probably 300 or more episodes of this podcast with that mic. And I just spent a fortune in time editing out breaths and little tiny room noises. And I have a pretty good recording environment. So then I switched to a dynamic mic, and my editing went down to, it just took hours and hours off my editing time. So I've been telling people to get a dynamic mic if they don't have a perfect recording environment. So what's your opinion?
Well, it could be a setting that you did. I mean, a microphone, whether it's condenser, the reason for vocals and the voice, there's some more a crispness and a high end the condenser mics used to have. Now, there's a dynamic Shure mic right now that's all the rage. I think it's the
Yeah,
SM7.
that's what I'm using right now, SM7B.
Okay.
Yeah.
That didn't exist when we first started
Yeah,
talking.
but it's $400 too.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the rage. That is a dynamic mic. I don't think that's what was causing your editing issues. I think either you had too much compression, there was something bringing up that noise. I mean, a microphone, if you breathe, the microphone's going to pick it up.
Well,
It's just that,
I do screw the Commute. So,
well, that might get you out of breath, but
yeah.
but at the end of the day, I don't think switching from a dynamic to a condenser was the issue. The issue
The
is
other way around is what I do.
well,
Yeah.
switching from a condenser to a dynamic. If you got a good sounding frequency response microphone, you can get it to work. But you know what a lot of people do is they get USB microphones. They don't have the outboard configuration, equalization, compression, noise gates, those kind of things that you can do with an audio mixer. You know, when you're getting back to making good audio, if you got a good audio mixer and you set it correctly and you the microphones are not the issue. It's the settings and the equipment you're using.
So you think that this microphone that I got now was so high quality it overcame those difficulties from the other mic?
Well, because it's a smaller diaphragm, because they figured out how to get a better vocal quality with a dynamic mic. Dynamic mics were usually used for loud percussive sounds like loud guitars, drums, and live performance. But in studios, all the way back to the 50s, you saw Frank Sinatra in front of that big round microphone at Capitol Records. Well, that was a large diaphragm condenser mic. We knew as audio engineers, you always did vocals on a large diaphragm condenser mic, but you adjusted it properly. And then I don't know when the SM7 came out, but all of a sudden in the last few years, Shure figured out a way to make a dynamic microphone that rivaled condenser microphones. And maybe it's less forgiving on
more
those
forgiving.
extraneous, or more forgiving on those extraneous noises. See, that's another thing. You may have gotten better at working the mic, because if you talk about other mistakes, if budget is no issue, you need an audio mixer, you need a compressor limiter, you need an SM7. That's what you need. But I just said about it.
Do you need that extra like I have a Focusrite
yeah,
interface.
You need some sort of A to D converter, Focusrite, IK Multimedia, Sonos.
You originally got me an Edirol a long time ago. It's still sitting there.
Edirol, I mean, when I told you to get Edirol, if you'd have said in 15 years they'll be out of business, I would have not believed you. But it was a great unit at the time. It made you money.
Yeah.
But just like any technology, nobody's using Windows 3.1 anymore either. Right. So Focusrite. In fact, I've upgraded to IK Multimedia. It's called an Axe, and I'm really pleased with the inputs on it.
All right, so people know what we're talking about. We're talking about getting a good quality professional microphone, converting it so it'll go into your computer. Is that a fair?
Right. Yeah. Right. If all you get is a USB microphone into your computer, you've limited your amount of control. And so the only control you have, even though the quality may be okay, is you've got level control, volume level, and you've got how you work the microphone. And we're going to get into some other mistakes here in a minute. But the main thing is that if you really want to have high quality audio, you need an external mixer, an external audio interface. Some mixers, like my particular mixer I have, has a compressor limiter built in, but you can buy external compressor limiters, or you can add that processing in the software afterwards. But regardless, you've got to know how to use and adjust those systems properly. And it's really, Tom, it's about getting the ears. One of the things that I did, and what I'd recommend, is get a sample of something that you know is good and compare yours, A/B it. And it's like, why does that sound good and why doesn't mine sound good? And learn how to adjust it to get closer to what you know is good. when it came to mixing records, we put up a great record that we knew was a hit, and we would listen back and forth and go, why does ours not sound as good as the hit? We know that that's the standard. So in other words, if you're not looking at perfection and then making the adjustments to get closer to that perfection, I'll give you a great example. I've had clients record something for me, and the mistake was I said, did you buy the microphone? Oh yeah. And then I realized that they didn't realize they turned their microphone on. They were using their webcam. I mean, it's a common mistake.
Right. Yeah.
Another mistake is the level is so low that it barely makes a waveform in the software. You've got to approach 0 dB, no more than somewhere between -3 and 0 is where you want to be constantly hovering with your video meters.
Well, speaking of that, Mike, I had to get this thing called a cloud lifter in addition to this fancy microphone. That was another $150.
Right.
Just to jack the signal up, but keep it clean.
Right. And that's one of the, a lot of people, when you say, well, you need to spend $500. I mean, you got to remember, a Neumann U85 was $5,000 when I had my studio.
Wow.
40 years ago. So a $500 microphone to get professional quality was like, well, so, and I'd hear people go, oh my God, $500 for a microphone. That should be like $50. No, you're not going to get quality for $50. And then all of a sudden these Samsung and all these companies started coming out with $100 and $125 USB microphones. And the USB microphones are good. They're miles above what we ever had before, but they're not compared to getting the right equipment.
Right.
So anyway, the other thing is, even with the right equipment, if you record your levels too low, then you've missed the point, because what happens is to raise the volume up, you're raising up what's called the noise floor. Every room that you record in has a certain measurable amount of noise. It could be a low hum from a light. It could be I've had people have refrigerators in their office. Well, that refrigerator is making a low little hum, and that's a measurable noise on a microphone.
I had a guy with the fish tank, and another lady with a grandfather clock.
Well, I mean, you have to make a quiet environment, quiet enough. And of course, ACX recommends a 60 dB noise floor, meaning when you record silence.
Tell them what ACX, folks, is the place you go to get accepted for an audiobook into Audible that's owned by Amazon.
Yeah. And these settings that we're talking about, which I know you wanted to kind of gear towards the audiobook and even podcast world.
Right.
You want to have as quiet a room as you can get. That's why we used to build isolation booths in our studios, is full of padding. I mean, when you go in an isolation booth, you can almost hear your heartbeat because it's so quiet, and any sound in that booth is being absorbed by the soundproofing foam.
Mm-hmm.
We used to use a foam much like bedding foam, but it was called Arlex or Sonex. And you can go get bedding foam and it does the exact same thing. But at any rate, I had a client years ago said, this microphone's defective. And I said, what do you mean it's defective? Well, there's this rattle. I just keep hearing this rattle every time I record. I said, well, send me a sample of your recording. Turns out their disk drive was rattling. and they didn't realize. So you have to be conscious. Like my little studio here in my house is quiet enough for what I want to do. I mean, I'm able to do vocals here, able to do my podcast. I made sure that this is a quiet end of the house. I don't have, I actually use what's nowadays they have microphone stand vocal booth semicircles. I don't know if you ever seen any of those.
Now I'm not in it right now, but for preparing for my audiobooks, I built like a PVC frame, and then I've got those acoustic blankets over it. And it's
Right.
really crazy. If you clap your hands outside, it sounds one way. You go inside, it's just like dead. Boom.
Right. Well, to record a voice, you need what's called a dead room. No reflections, no reverberation, no echoes. And of course, those are the mistakes people make. They're not conscious of their recording environment. Okay, I'm about an inch from the microphone, and I have also another thing that people don't have, and I know you've got it. I have a pop filter, and we'll talk about pop filters here in a second. But if I've moved back a foot, and I'm talking.
Totally different.
Totally different. And you have to watch radio hosts, on television. Watch videos, whether you like him or not. Look at Howard Stern. He eats the microphone every time he talks. And when he's not talking, he backs off. But he just instinctively knows to get right up to that microphone and get into its sweet spot of what's called its reception pattern. Because if you're not in the sweet spot of the reception pattern, you get an inferior recording. And it could be a recording that the engineers at ACX or even your audience would notice something's not right. Well, it's learning to not move. You can be animated, but you have to keep your speaking voice within a distance. Now, there are consonants in the English language, and I guess any language, hard consonants, B's, D's, and P's especially. When you say words with those, I'm going to take my pop filter off. Pop, pop, pop. That probably made an ugly thud. Yep. That is distortion. And people who don't know how, I used to see professional announcers when they would say, Peter Jones popped a pizza on his pink truck. He could turn his head instinctively every time that P came up. And that was not to ruin a take with what was an explosion of, see, if you put your hand in front of your mouth and say pop, you're going to feel this burst of air hit your hand. You can say Mike, you can say Tom, you can say including, open, but when I say pop, Peter, you can feel a real hard, and that burst of air kills microphones.
It's like a sledgehammer hitting that diaphragm.
Right, absolutely. So you can learn how to, and in fact, one of the things they want you to do is they want you to have a maximum audio level, and they don't want, extraneous noises, and make sure that you don't pop the microphone with words you're saying. You don't need to be dropping stuff. You don't need the dog coming in and barking, and
which might happen during this podcast, but it's not an audio book.
Well, but if it was an audio book, that would be an artifact that wouldn't be acceptable. So you got to measure how much noise is in your room and eliminate that noise. That's a big mistake that people do. And then you got to have software that allows you to get the settings and the measurements to be professional. There's processing that all software will do to fix things. But I used to have an audio engineer producer years ago. He said, if you lay it down right, you don't have to fix it later.
Yeah.
I always remembered that. He used to say, if you lay it down right, it'll mix itself. It's kind of like, putting lipstick on a pig. If it's a pig, the lipstick ain't going to make it not a pig. So,
all right. So let's do an experiment here. So I have a pop screen that's about 2 inches from my SMB, and the SMB has one of those foam things on it too.
It has a built-in pop screen.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm about 3 inches from the pop screen, so I'm about 5 inches from the microphone. So I want your professional ear to tell me if I'm not at a good length. Does it sound okay?
You sound close, Mike, to me. Yes.
Okay, but what if I go here and talk to you, Mike? Is that better or worse? Check.
That's that's a little warmer. Sounded like you got a little closer.
Yeah, I got 2 inches closer to the pop screen. So you like that better?
Yeah, but say pop into it. Right.
Pop.
Eat the microphone and say pop.
Pop. Pop.
See, they have really designed that microphone for dummies.
Yeah, and even when I did that thing about pick up our podcast app, I did turn my head for APP, but this is a pretty, good quality microphone. And I think
Now,
you're
if you
right.
were to take that foam off of there and get right to the diaphragm, you could trash that mic.
Right. But you like it better here, right where it is now, rather than back here. Check
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Check
That's
1, 2, 3.
but the polar pattern, they call it a polar pattern, where the microphone is sensitive. They've really, we're talking microphone technology has been around since the 30s, and condenser mics didn't change much over the years. They didn't need to, because nobody but audio engineers bought them. But now, sure, the manufacturer of that particular microphone realizes that there's podcasters. And, give you a great example, Billie Eilish, her and her brother record her Grammy-winning projects in her bedroom with that microphone.
Wow.
Now, that didn't exist when you and I met.
Bro, no. Heck, this is 21 years ago.
And microphone technology, Telefunken and Neumann out of Germany invented the high quality microphone for the speaking voice. I don't know if you know this history, and I don't mean to offend people, but Adolf Hitler was the one who wanted a better microphone.
Did not know that.
He was adamant to make the most highest quality microphone for his propaganda speeches, and that's why the German technology made the world's best microphones.
Wow, did not know that.
Yeah, well, there you go. He was an evil jerk, so I want to say I'm not a proponent of Mr. Hitler, but he did put the incentive into the engineers, and that's how and that was in the 30s. And all those Telefunken microphones he wanted a microphone that made him sound more robust over the PA speakers at those functions, and it worked. Sadly,
there you go.
But the microphones worked, and then years later, in the 40s and 50s, after the war, the audio engineers said, "Oh my gosh, the quality of this microphone that's why Capitol Records had it." Go look at pictures of the Beatles. The Beatles are all around a Telefunken microphone, singing their harmonies. And it's because that's what everybody used. Nobody knew the home recording was in the future. Nobody ever thought that.
All right. So what other kind of mistakes are they making?
Just not learning to use your software, not learning how easy it is to mark edits, understanding how to do pickups.
I still snap my fingers. I think you taught me that 100 years ago.
The software will let you mark where your mistake is. We used to give out clickers.
Right, like the dog clickers. Yep.
And that's how we would tell our voiceover talents to mark a mistake. But then half the time people would steal our clickers and we'd be out of them. And so I said, snap your fingers, and it gives you the same marking. So learning to mark mistakes, learning what a pickup is. Audiobooks unloaded to ACX, pickup. Audiobooks unloaded, another mistake, pickup. Audiobooks uploaded to ACX must adhere to the following requirements. You see how I marked my mistakes so that when I'm looking at the audio editing, I can quickly audio edit.
Yeah, I see the big spikes right on the screen here as we're talking. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, audio editing is overwhelming. Well, I used to say, take out what's bad, what's left is good.
Yep,
I mean, don't make it hard on yourself. When I was editing with a razor blade, that's when it was hard. Now editing is a breeze.
Yeah, you just have to learn the software. And now I do a pretty darn good job of the quiet environment, but I still use noise reduction. Tell them about that.
I don't know why you're using noise reduction. See, noise reduction used to be the reducing of tape hiss. In a digital world, there is no digital noise. So what do you reduce? What noise are you reducing? You're doing noise elimination software?
Well, I'm not sure of the terminology, but anyway, I take a noise print of my file, and it might be system noise that as far as I know, but I how the wave is like perfectly smooth if it's quiet, right? Well, there's a little bit of fuzziness in that line. So I just take a noise print. It says capture noise print. And then I say process the entire file, and it takes out any noise. And especially, I get guests on here that all different. It's not you. Let me put it that way. It's not your quality. It can be all over the board where there's all kinds of noise on their track. So I take it out with noise reduction.
Well, absolutely. Okay, so that's not noise reduction. Historically, was reducing the noise from tape hiss.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. So I'm using the wrong term.
Okay, so that's why you confusing this old audio engineer. If you listen to a 1960s album, even on CD, you'll hear this hiss, and that's called tape noise. And the way you mask tape noise is having what's called a better signal to noise ratio. But what you're doing is doing noise sampling and elimination.
Oh,
and
okay.
Now software can learn what the noise is, the noise floor, and it can go through the whole file, isolate those noises, and eliminate them. As long as it doesn't auditorily affect the quality of your recording, the software has gotten better and better and better over the years. Years ago, you would do it, and then all of a sudden, you're like, and so as audio engineers, once back, it goes back to the theory: get it laid right, so you don't have to use software to fix it. But now, in fact, what's amazing, and you can see it on YouTube, there's software now that can go into recordings and pull the instruments apart. I mean, you can go listen to isolated vocals of the Beatles and the Beach Boys that were mono records, and it can go into the recording and learn the part you want and pull just that out. So the software just keeps getting better and better and more. I'm sure it's artificial intelligence stuff. So if you're happy with the results, fine, because what that's doing is that if you do have a noise floor sample, in fact, that's one of the things here I can see. It says have a room tone at the beginning and end. They're wanting to see how noisy your environment is. And if you exceed a threshold, they're probably going to reject you.
Yeah, he's talking about from audiobooks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even though this is audiobooks, this is just audio engineering 101. Make sure your environment is consistently as quiet and human. In fact, I knew a studio in Atlanta that floated on rubber.
Wow.
The Bill Lowry studio, the whole studio had 3 inches of hard rubber, so that the vibrations of the cars going down the street in front of the studio would not be low frequencies in the studio that the microphones could pick up and could make a noise floor of a low rumble.
Wow.
And you're not going to do that. I mean, you're not going to build a room that is completely isolated from the sounds of the world. Jets flying over, kids outside.
Well, maybe whenever they throw me in the loony bin with padded walls, it might have a rubber floor. Let me see how crazy I am.
Well, you take your computer in there, you'll get a better recording.
All right, well, we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we're going to ask Mike what's a typical day look like for him on his Wave Runner and how he stays motivated. He's also got some cool stories about bugs he might want to tell you. So, folks, I'm just so proud of this program. I've raised a lot of money for homeless children and animals and all kinds of stuff over the years. But, I kind of, as I look back, I'm proud of that. But I kind of think they're kind of Band-Aids, because what happens to those kids after I fed them for a year? But in this case, I really want to change people's lives permanently. And these folks that got dealt a hand much more difficult than most of us, just for me to jump into Suburban and go down to 7-Eleven and back is 15 minutes. For a lot of them with physical disabilities, it could be an hour just to get ready and get in a car. So I want to do something about this, and I need your help. We want to get them trained, and by the way, their suicide rates are 4 times the average. Their depression rates are 3.7 times the average, and their unemployment is the highest it's ever been in 7 years. So I want to do something about it, and I'm going to do something about it, but I'd love to have your help. if you could check out imtcva.org/disabilities and then click on the GoFundMe campaign. You'll actually see some of the people there, how they're progressing, and anything you can contribute, we really appreciate it. It's all going to scholarships for them, and we're also going to use some of the money to hire people with disabilities to help run the program. And I'm finding from some of these folks that have sight impairment that we have to upgrade the school a little bit to help them get through the courses. So there's all kinds of stuff that you could help out with, and we really appreciate it. So check it out, imtcva.org/disabilities. All right, let's get back to the main event. My old buddy Mike Stewart's here telling you things to take your audio to the next level. He guarantees you will get a gold record if you listen to him. So
Hey, I'm going to make a disclaimer. I ain't guaranteeing anything like that.
So Mike, what's a typical Nashville day look like for you nowadays?
Well, because of all the things I've learned over the years, it gave me the freedom to, in my 60s, to move to Nashville. And, one of the things that I enjoy doing is this is very much a relationship town. The music business is about, every success story in the music business is relationships. You can trace the relationships that this guy knew this guy that knew this guy. I'm going to bust a bubble here. There is no talent scout and going, "Oh my Tom, you're a star. Sign the rich and famous contract, and you'll be a star next week."
I guarantee it, right?
Guarantee it. Yeah, I'll guarantee you a gold record. No. The bottom line is you got to build relationships. You've got to have amazing content that the world loves. It's very much akin to internet marketing. My friend Armin Morin says, "Don't make a putz, a product unable to sell." And I've made a handful of putts in my life, but I've made some winners too. And that's why you just keep going back to the drawing board and go, well, I think from all my knowledge and my experience, this is something that people will embrace. And it's akin to the music business. If you write a song about liver and onions, you may love it, but nobody else loves it. But, if you write a song about your heart being broke, or you're finding love, or you miss your baby, or, 1,000 tried and true subjects, then people may like it. And I used to love American Bandstand. It's got a good beat and you can dance to it. That was what every kid ever said on Rate a Record. Well, all songs have a good beat and you can dance to most all records. So that's just the public. So you have to make content and you have to be in the relationships with the people who are the decision makers. So my day in Nashville is constantly meeting with influencers.
Real influencers, right?
Real influencers.
Yeah.
Like I'm working with an agency here that represents a band called the Headliners. The Headliners are three singers from 90s bands that there's 30 number one records between these three singers. And they're trying to make a comeback because by music standards, they're old. All those are 90s guys. They're old. They're not old. They're in their 50s, but they're the people who dominate in the charts are kids, and they're in their 20s and 30s. And so I love working with artists and try to bridge the gap of the internet. The mindset here in Nashville is the internet caused the problems. And I tell them the internet's not the problem. Your refusal to embrace what's possible is the problem. And I'm having a blast getting some breakthroughs. In fact, I helped produce SawyerBrown.live. There's a big band from the 90s called Sawyer Brown, and Mark Miller has been open to my ideas. And they're doing it. When it comes to content creation, this town is amazingly creative. But when it comes to internet marketing, there's a lot of holes that they haven't plugged.
Well, you know what, Mike, though, I'm so happy that we didn't get interrupted on this podcast, because you are such a rock star touring currently that I was afraid the groupies would be beating on the door, so it might be too early for that. But tell them about your touring.
Well, anyway, coming to Nashville has got me back to my first passion, which is playing, performing, and creating music again. And at least I have people here who can make decisions, publishers, managers, and so forth. So anyway, talking about relationships and how what I'm doing today. Years ago, I met a fellow named Gary Talley, and Gary was in a band with me in Atlanta in the 70s. And I went over to his house, and you talk about gold records. His wall was covered with gold records.
Wow.
And I said, Gary, you were in the Box Tops, the band that had the hit song "The Letter," "Give Me a Ticket for an Airplane." I mean, this was 1976, only about 10 years later. He said, yeah, I was in the Box Tops. I said, what are you playing with us for? And I got a music lesson that I never forgot. He says, I need the money. And I went, how is it you could be having all these hit records and you need the money? Well, if you don't write the songs, if you don't produce the songs, and you got a manager who takes more than his fair share, when it's all over, you could be broke. And that happened over and over and over again. So that was something I want to help talented people who have fans. I tell people every day, you're in the music business, you're in the fan building business. So anyway, Gary and I have been friends forever. When I moved to Nashville, I reconnected with him because he moved here in the 80s. And baby boomers love the Box Top, and they love those hit songs. You know, our average groupie is 65 or older. And so there is an agency out of Los Angeles that packages these oldies acts. Herman's Hermits, Tommy James and the Shondells, the Buckinghams. I mean, if you go to Paradise Agency, you can see the Box Tops is one of the Blood, Sweat, and Tears. You wouldn't believe all the bands that are still out there working. Why are they still working? Because they don't know anything else to do. This is what they've always done. They've always played music. They don't want to do anything else. And then two, they get paid well, and the baby boomer audience loves going to these shows. So the keyboard position opened up for the Box Tops, and because I had a relationship with Gary, Gary said, "Hey, let's get Mike to be our new keyboard player," and that's how I got in the Box Tops.
Oh, relationships. There you go.
Relationships, and then of course I've been helping them learn internet marketing, and you know, little by little building our audience, because the internet marketing world is very akin to the music world. We call them subscribers. Music people call them fans. So in other words, you got to build a huge list, and then you got to convert that list to a sale. And the music world doesn't understand. I mean, I see people perform live here in town all the time, and not one way of knowing how to stay in touch with those people. They got a room full of 1,000 people, and they're not doing anything to connect with them.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh,
I ask artists, I won't name names, but I asked a producer friend of mine, I said, you have a number one artist on country records right now. Yeah. Why aren't they doing a podcast? And you know what his answer was?
What?
What's a podcast?
Yeah.
And so I said, well, it's a way for your artist to build fans, to go to her shows and buy her whatever she's selling. And it's like, well, they don't have time. You know, it's always, it's overcoming these excuses. But, you know, it's become a game to me now. I enjoy it. And that's my Nashville day is creating again, producing. In fact, I created a Spotify band called Nash Memphis, Gary and I of the Box Tops. And in fact, anybody listen to this, go to your, if you have a music service, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, any of them, we're everywhere. In fact, there's a company called, I'm having a senior moment here. distrokid.com. If you're a musician, you can, for $20 a year, have your music everywhere.
Wow.
In other words, when I was a kid, if you didn't go with a record label that could distribute your music to record stores, something from the past, you couldn't have a hit record. Well, for $20 a year, my music can be in Spotify, Apple, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube, and I keep all the streaming money. So never before in the history of building an audience has the music industry needed that. So anyway, I'm a big advocate of DistroKid. We have this project. Go to YouTube and search Nash Memphis. It's a Nashville tribute to music that was created in Memphis in the '60s, and we're just looking for our fans.
Beautiful. But you said that it's quite a bit like the internet. Tell them about how you've been able to make bugs extremely profitable online. That cracks me up.
Well, here in Nashville, we have the Nashville Podcasters, and I've got a lot of Dave Ramsey podcast is one of the big podcasts that come to this thing. So I've known about podcasting, I guess 15 years, and to me, it's just a part of content marketing. It's an ability to build an audience because your content's good or really good. And then you get the opportunity to tell people how to support you. That you're the only advertiser on your show is you. And the world is free to podcast. So I was helping an old friend of mine, songwriter friend, Hal Coleman, and he sold his pest control company about 11, 12 years ago. And he said, I want to be a coach like you, Mike. I want to coach business owners. And so we tried that and it didn't work. And I said, look, Hal, you're a bug guy. You owned a bug company. You killed bugs your whole life. Bug guys will relate to you. I said, we need to market to bug owners, bug exterminators. And he said, well, what do we need to do? I said, well, the first thing we need to do is we need to blog, build a YouTube channel, and we need to podcast. And of course, Hal said, I don't know what you said. And I said, well, let's just do it. Let's just do it. I'll do the technical side. All you got to do is just show up and dispel your words of wisdom. He had a good microphone. He had a computer. And in fact, even when I lived in Atlanta, we produced it over the internet because I didn't want to drive across town, 45 miles to just produce a podcast. We could do it just as easily as you and I are doing.
Yeah, right.
So we started the first pest control marketers podcast. And it is a podcast just for the owners or people thinking about starting a pest control agency. And we have the #1 pest control marketing podcast in the world. I mean, if you Google pest control marketing podcast, you'll see we're all over the place. And we don't have a lot of listeners. We probably have about 1,000 downloads per episode, but it's 1,000 targeted listeners. And we pitch our coaching program, our marketing services, our consulting, our membership sites, our annual event. In other words, we have what I call a digital back end. And all Hal wanted was we in fact we did our podcast before we did this podcast today. I stole an idea from you. We did QR codes for bug guys. Came out. It was a good episode too.
Yeah.
Because hey, did you know QR code stands for quick response code?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did. Well, I didn't know that till I Wikipedia'd it yesterday. But anyway, long and short of it is a percentage of our listeners become $6,000 to $10,000 a year worth of business to us. And Hal wanted 10 coaching clients so that he could work. What did he say? He wanted to work 10 hours a month and make $6,000 because he sold his business. He's got retirement money. And he said, if I can make $6,000 a month, working 4 hours a month, that gives me the rest of the week to hunt and fish and be with my grandkids. And he's doing better than that. So and then I do, what I'm doing is what's called pay-per-click landing pages for pest control agencies. I've taken video, my passion. I've taken WordPress, my passion. I've done copywriting, which I love. And we build secret, optimize landing pages for Google AdWords, but we put a video in there. And so I tell a pest control agency, what makes you money? Killing bugs. No. Break it down. What bugs do you make the most money on? And I've learned a whole lot from about bug guys. In Philadelphia, the spotted lanternfly is a huge problem.
Never even heard of that.
Well, if you Google spotted lanternfly Philadelphia, you'll find my guys, Harpoon Pest Solutions, and we buy ads. The term, when people in Philadelphia, we buy a 50-mile radius of just the term spotted lanternfly. That's just the term. And then what happens is that gets to their landing page, and the video has them coming on saying, you hate spotted lanternflies. Well, we know how to get rid of them. Give us a call. In fact, I'll let this play a little bit in the background.
They're beautiful to look at, damaging to all of our trees, shrubs, and plants. And soon they're coming in droves to a neighborhood near you.
That's good.
Yeah, spotted lanternfly season is upon us. So while we've all been advised to squash them, smash them, and never let a single one live, they can often overwhelm our properties and plants. That's why Harpoon Pest Solutions is on the job of providing protective coverage against spotted lanternflies before they get established in your yard. Too many of these critters can cause significant damage to your ornamental trees and shrubs, vines, and garden crops. Preventative action can help reduce this damage and keep your yard pest-free this year. We are committed to making all of our clients 100% happy. Let us help you combat spotted lanternflies this year and bring you peace of mind, knowing your plants are protected. Contact Harpoon Pest Solutions today.
Harpoon Pest Solutions. When it comes to bugs, just say no. Call 215-588-2180.
Man, I wish I had that pest down here. We don't have them here.
Well, my point is the ads are cheap, and
Yeah, because nobody's buying that term.
right. And so we build multiple campaigns to multiple problems that they solve, and we produce the YouTube videos or the videos. And of course, I want that one to play all the way to the end, because that's got, I think we talked about it in a previous podcast.
Jingle.
But the SERP term jingle, even if nobody buys, Google Harpoon Pest Solutions. When it comes to bugs, just say no. Call 215-588-2180. So we're planning in the 50-mile radius local market how to Google them, even if you're not interested in using them. But in fact, this particular client said, lower the budget on the ads. We can't handle the business. So anyway, in fact, I'm going to be building a training that's on, because I don't care what the business is. You solve problems. You know, what are you, Tom? I'm an internet marketing coach. Great. That's broad. What problems do you solve? Break it down. Well, I help people who struggle with headlines. Okay. Headline copy coach. See, that broke that. Now, how many things could you break down what you do?
Yeah.
Probably thousands. And you build a video. Hi, I'm Tom Antion, and you struggle with knowing how to make the perfect headline for your YouTube videos, for your podcasts, for your blog posts. Well, let me tell you, headlines are the most important thing. And let me tell you why I'm the best at teaching you that. And here's what I want you to do. Call this number, fill in this form, download this free ebook, whatever you want to do. And that phrase, that page is optimized for that phrase, and that's the only phrase you buy. And then you build another campaign to a different video. Beautiful. And that's what I'm doing. The reason I'm doing it for bug guys is because when we get a bug customer from our podcast, they're sold. They don't go, they say, what do I got to do first? And of course, me and Hal are supposedly retired.
Yeah. Touring in a band, creating jingles, writing music, meeting with big shots in Nashville. You're retired. Yep.
You know, here's my definition of retirement. If I don't like it, I can kindly say no.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I love it, let's put it this way. You said, be on my podcast. You can't shut me up. You know why? Because I love this, Tom. This is life to me. This keeps me going. I'll be on your podcast every week if you wanted me to be, but I know that's asking.
Yeah,
too
we
much.
should. Yeah. You host it and I'll go out in the wave runner.
No, I think I'm going to go out on the wave runner.
Yeah. Well, gee, thanks so much. Speaking of shutting you up and shutting me up, I think this is the longest podcast I've ever done. And that's great because it was full of great tips for everybody, good stories, and you perfectly explained niche markets, the bug business. Everybody says the riches are in the niches. Well, there you go. So what I'm sad about is I don't have any spotted lanternflies around. Never even heard of them. So maybe I can get some of your harpoon guy to save a few, and then we'll introduce them down here, and then I'll start a bug company.
I think if you don't have them, you ought to leave well enough alone.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'll tell you what you could do. Hey, they have this new software where you could break this into 2 podcasts, part 1 and part 2, if you really wanted to.
No, I don't want. I want the continuity. I want them to hear you from beginning to end, and I think you have the world's record for the most times on this podcast too, and you're going to keep breaking it too because you're going to come back, right?
I'll come back Tom, when the phone rings with you or the email comes in with you, you know the answer. It's always yes.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much, Mike. So tell everybody how they get a hold of you and find some of your stuff. Well, you got a lot of courses on lots of things.
If you go to mikestewart.live, or even pestcontrolmarketing.live, there is plenty of ways of seeing all the things I do. And I've got a podcast that I do. I am so proud of you. 470 shows or something.
You're number 476. Yep.
Holy moly. You got more energy than I do. We're at about 120 with the pest control marketing one.
Yeah, but I don't have to go meet any big shots for lunch like you do. I mean, you and Shania Twain are walking down the street and all kinds of stuff like that,
Well, she's been asking about you.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh, well, no, at any rate, you know what? I just enjoy what I'm doing. And a mentor of mine years ago says, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. So I'm just doing all I can that makes me happy. And for right now, I'm just very grateful that you invited me on again. And I hope people got some good out of it. MikeStewart.live will tell you everything you need to know about Mike Stewart. And if you don't believe there's money in bugs, go to pestcontrolmarketing.live.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much, Mike. And say hello to your wife for me. And